breeze around coastal areas will make it feel chilly. And overnight, the showers in the east tend to ease. There'll be one or two further downpours into western parts of the UK as well as the far north. But inland, many places seeing clear skies through the night, and as a result, temperatures falling low single figures, perhaps even just below freezing in one or two spots. So a chilly start to Thursday, but a bright sunny start for many. And actually, it's looking like more sunshine, fewer showers compared to recent days. For a large part of the country, it's simply a sunny day, but there will be some showers feeding in from the North Sea for East Anglia, northern Scotland, as well as parts of West Wales and Cornwall. Brisk breeze here will make it feel cold, and temperatures, by and large, a degree or two down compared to today's. But you can see in the northwest a change on their way, with the areas of clouds starting to approach and some light rain. Unsettled in the northwest as we end the week and go into the weekend. A lot of cloud elsewhere across the UK, and temperatures recovering.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point. Got a job. That Commissioner can't get anything right, can she? Give you the latest from
The battery for...
It's Finance Day here at COP26, and that means that Rishi Sunak will be speaking in just a few minutes' time, laying out the details of maybe new regulations being placed on British companies. What's all that about? We'll explore that in detail. We've also got a bit of an interview with one of the leaders of the political parties of Canada. I also tried to catch up with US climate envoy John Kerry yesterday, and we'll bring you an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at COP26. All that and so much more coming up on the briefing, but first, here's your news.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date at 9 o'clock. Financial companies based in the UK are going to be forced to come up with plans to achieve net carbon zero by 2023. It's all part of the Treasury's aims for a greener future. Well, as part of COP26, the Chancellor will make all financial institutions and listed companies detail how they'll adapt and decarbonise to hit climate change targets. Those plans will then be checked against standards set out by green industry leaders. The Treasury has also announced that 450 global firms who manage 40% of the world's financial assets have aligned their businesses to operate with the Paris Agreement. We'll be hearing from the Chancellor shortly. Now, police have released a video of the moment that 4-year-old Cleo Smith was found alive and well. She disappeared from a campsite in Western Australia more than 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
Cleo, my name's Cameron. How are you? Are you okay? We're going to take you to see your mummy and daddy, okay? Is that good?
Officers discovered her in a locked house in the coastal town of Carnarvon during a raid early this morning. She'd vanished from her family's tent. A man from the area is in custody. The Premier of Western Australia, Mark McGowan, praised the police force for their amazing piece of detective work.
Everyone involved, just a marvellous job. It's an amazing piece of police work, amazing piece of detective work. I think this will be looked at by police forces around the nation and indeed around the world as to what can be done if you have the right people and the right way of looking at it, and you do it methodically with determination, which is exactly what has occurred here. So congratulations to West Australian Police.
Colleagues of a Conservative MP found to have breached lobbying rules will attempt to overthrow his punishment, asking for a proper investigation. Last month, Owen Paterson was handed a 30-day suspension after a standards body found he used his position to benefit 2 companies that paid him as a consultant. His allies will argue the investigation into the alleged misconduct was flawed. Labour have described this attempt as double standards. A top scientist has quit as one of the government's leading advisors on coronavirus. He warned the UK's infection rates remain concerning. Sir Jeremy Farrar stepped down from the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies last month to focus on his work at a health research foundation. He said SAGE had provided advice to ministers often under huge pressure and that the crisis was a long way from being over. Labour said his resignation was a serious blow. Research shows women diagnosed with breast cancer at a young age have a greater chance of it spreading to other parts of their body. A global study on the disease found that those under the age of 35 appear to be more at risk than those aged 50 or over. Around 1,000 women in the UK die each month from secondary breast cancer. Oncologist Professor Carol Sakura, though, said there can be an efficient process for breast cancer diagnosis in England.
No doubt that women under 35 with a breast lump should go and see their doctor. The pathway for breast diagnosis is tremendous in this country. You get screened, you have mammogram, ultrasound, biopsy, all in an afternoon. It can all be done there and then, and a treatment plan coming out later that day.
Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been wasted as the Ministry of Defence continually fails to learn from its mistakes. That's according to the Commons spending watchdog. The Public Accounts Committee accused the department of having a broken system for procuring military equipment. For example, they mentioned the Ajax tank programme, which they said had been beset with issues. The cross-party committee said it was extremely disappointed and frustrated by the continued poor track record on procurement by the MOD. Boris Johnson is being criticised for not wearing a face mask while sitting next to Sir David Attenborough at the COP26 climate summit. The Prime Minister faced a backlash on social media after people shared a photograph of him with the 95-year-old broadcaster. Mr Johnson has been seen wearing a face covering in other photos taken at the same events. You are up to date here. We're going to hear from the Chancellor shortly. I'll have the headlines for you at past. But now back to Tom in Glasgow.
Well, we're here at COP26, and although many world leaders jetted off back to their various countries last night, slightly ironically, there are some people still sticking around here and many people for the full 2 weeks. One of them is Rishi Sunak, and he's speaking
by
now.
Sea levels rising, droughts and wildfires spreading, people forced out of their homes. But I look around this hall and I feel optimism. Why? Because this is the first COP to bring together so many of the world's finance ministers, businesses and investors with such a clear common purpose: to deliver the promise made in Paris 6 years ago to direct the world's wealth to protect our planet. The good news is that the will is there. At least 80% of the global economy has committed to net zero or carbon neutrality targets. Our challenge now is to deploy the investment we need to deliver those targets around the world. To do so, we are accelerating 3 actions today. First, we need increased public investment. And I want to speak directly to the developing countries of the world. We know that you've been devastated by the double tragedies of coronavirus and climate change. That's why the G20 is stepping up to provide debt treatments more swiftly. It's why the IMF are providing a new $650 billion allocation of special drawing rights, and Kristalina will say more on this later. And it's why we're going to meet the target to provide $100 billion of climate finance to developing countries. And while we know we are not yet meeting it soon enough, we will work closely with developing countries to do more and to reach the target sooner. Over the next 5 years, we will deliver a total of $500 billion of investment to the countries that need it most. And we can do more today. I can announce that the United Kingdom will commit £100 million to the Task Force on Access to Climate Finance, making it quicker and easier for developing countries to access the finance they need. And we're supporting a new capital markets mechanism, which will issue billions of new green bonds here in the UK to fund renewable energy in developing countries. 2 tangible, practical examples of how we're delivering our promise of $100 billion. But public investment alone isn't enough. Our second action is to mobilise private finance. Let me pay an enormous tribute to Mark Carney for his leadership that is delivering results. The Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero has now brought together financial organisations with assets worth over $130 trillion of capital to be deployed. This is a historic wall of capital for the net zero transition around the world. What matters now is action, to invest that capital in our low-carbon future. To do that, investors need to have as much clarity and confidence in the climate impact of their investments as they do in the traditional financial metrics of profit and loss. So our third action is to rewire the entire global financial system for net zero. Better and more consistent climate data, sovereign green bonds, mandatory sustainability disclosures, proper climate risk surveillance, stronger global reporting standards. All things we need to deliver, and I'm proud that the UK is playing its part. We've already made it mandatory for businesses to disclose climate-related financial information, with 35 other countries signing up to do the same. Today, I'm announcing that the UK will go further and become the first ever net zero aligned financial centre. This means we are going to move towards making it mandatory for firms to publish a clear, deliverable plan setting out how they will decarbonise and transition to net zero, with an independent task force to define what's required. So, a renewed pledge to $100 billion a year of public funding, over $130 trillion of private capital waiting to be deployed, and a greener financial system underway. 6 years ago, Paris set the ambition. Today in Glasgow, we're providing the investment we need to deliver that ambition. Now, I know when people hear about global finance, it can often feel remote and abstract. But we're not simply talking about numbers on a page. We're talking about making a tangible difference to people's lives, about cheap, reliable and clean electricity to power schools and hospitals in rural Africa, about better coastal defences in the Philippines and the Pacific Islands to protect people from storm surges, about everyone, everywhere, having fresher water to drink, cleaner air to breathe, better insulated homes in which to live. That's the vision we're asking you to commit to. That's the opportunity we're asking you to invest in, and that's the work that we're asking you to begin today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Chancellor. I'd now like to call on the COP President to say a few words from his perspective.
Chancellor Rishi Sunak there talking about the global transition in global finance towards net zero. It was an optimistic speech, one that didn't mention some of the stings in the tails that we've been hearing about in the papers this morning, the potential to fine companies that do not submit their own net zero plans. There's some sinister aspects to this as well. It's not all rainbows and unicorns. Well, away from the finance discussions that have been happening today, there have been many other people from around the world here at this conference. One of them is John Kerry, of course, the Democratic nominee for the US presidency in 2004. He lost that race to George Bush. He's now Joe Biden's climate envoy. And he made a speech yesterday where he urged the rich countries to lead by example. Well, I tried to catch up with him yesterday in this conference centre when he was walking around, and I asked him if what the US is doing here at this conference is leading by example.
Mr. Kerry, is an 86-car convoy leading by example?
We're going to go.
I have no idea. Mr. Kerry, is arriving by private jet leading by example? Mr. Kerry, is Joe Biden's convoy leading by example? Mr. Kerry, do you promise to not fall asleep today? Mr. Kerry, is falling asleep a good look for the president?
He's not doing any further interviews.
Mr. Kerry, is falling asleep a good look for the president?
Yeah, it doesn't matter which side you're on. It's not doing interviews right now.
Does the US need...
Sadly, John Kerry there not being particularly communicative, which is a bit of a shame, especially if he's talking about leading by example, about what all these other countries should do. Arriving by private jet, at one point an 86-car convoy for Joe Biden, many cars, many idling cars, and of course the President of the United States falling asleep. I'm not sure what sort of example that's setting for the world. However, there's another leader that I caught up with yesterday as well. Jagmeet Singh is the leader of the New Democratic Party in Canada. Of course, after Justin Trudeau didn't manage to win a majority in the last Canadian election, it's these sorts of parties that hold the balance of power. And the NDP holds the balance of power in the Canadian Parliament. I caught up with their leader, Jagmeet Singh, to ask what he was doing all the way across an ocean here in Glasgow.
What brings you across to COP? What brings you across an ocean to join us here at COP?
Well, we're up against one of the challenges of challenges of our generation, and we've got to do everything we can to fight to make sure we protect our planet. So I'm here to push for solutions and to push to get more action on fighting the climate crisis.
Have you had any meetings with Justin Trudeau, who is also obviously here over these 2 days?
Of course, we've had lots of meetings and we've been discussing the importance of how we can fight the climate crisis in Canada, how we can show leadership, how right now our track record in Canada has not been something that we can be proud of. We've got to do a lot more to reduce our emissions, and so I've been talking about what we need to do to improve that.
In terms of the G7, Canada is one of those countries that's actually grown its emissions in the last 30 years. The UK has been the most successful country in reducing our emissions. Is that a moment of shame for Canada?
Absolutely, no question about it. First of all, I think it's important to acknowledge the success of other countries, and the United Kingdom has been pretty phenomenal, particularly with the accountability bills that they put in place that require each government to be very accountable to the targets they set. Canada, particularly under the recent leadership, is the only country in the G7 that's actually increased emissions instead of reducing it since this government has taken power. So we need to do a lot more, and that's why I'm pushing for that real concrete action.
Do you think that what Trudeau says is always matched up with what he does?
Sadly, no, and that's been a problem. And I don't take any pleasure in saying that. I wish the words matched up the actions so that we were doing our part, but the reality is that's not what it is. And the cost, though, is too great for us to bear. The cost is we're not seeing the reductions, we're not being leaders on a global stage, and it takes away our ability to encourage other countries to do their part. So we need to do more, we need to be leaders, we need to end the subsidizing of fossil fuels, which is one of the major problems. That public financing should be going towards sustainable energy, renewable energy. We can reinvest that in a really remarkable way to actually invest and scale up renewable energy and other clean initiatives. But right now, with that public investment going towards fossil fuels, it's a wasted opportunity, and it's investing in something that's not going to actually benefit the planet or our country.
And just finally, one slightly unrelated question. The UK is looking to enhance our trade deal with Canada. Currently, we've sort of got this rollover EU deal, but with some other countries, we've sort of gone a little bit further now that the UK has an independent trade policy. Is that something you'd like to see?
Well, we're open to trade deals with countries, and we're open to having better relationships. Our major concern when it comes to trade deals is that we're protecting workers' rights, that we are protecting environmental rights, and that we're doing something that benefits, at the end of the day, people. We've often seen that large sectors and industries benefit from trade deals, but that benefit hasn't flowed to the worker, and that's something that I'm concerned about.
Well, Jagmeet. Jagmeet Singh there, the leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada. Well, it's interesting to me listening to these international perspectives. I've been speaking with Canadians, with Australians, with Americans, with people from all over the world here at COP26. And one of the interesting things that I've taken away from these conversations is just how much they're impressed by the UK in terms of how much the UK has done over the last 30 years. Jagmeet Singh there called the UK's progress phenomenal and called his own country's progress, Canada's progress, shameful. And I think that's something that many people in the United Kingdom don't recognise enough. Countries around the world respect the UK on climate and recognise that we've done more than most. Well, moving on now, because it's not just all about COP26. There's domestic politics going on, and indeed COP26 does feed into domestic politics as well. Prime Minister's Questions is at noon today, and one MP who will be sitting in the chamber there is Matt Vickers, the Conservative MP for Stockton South, who joins us now. Welcome to the programme. Matt, first of all, I want to ask you about Boris Johnson's language, because the Prime Minister has not necessarily been the bubbly, boosterish Boris we have come to know. Starting in Rome at the G20 summit, he was talking in a very pessimistic tone, and then starting COP, he was talking about a doomsday machine, talking about the Industrial Revolution as if it set off a doomsday machine with a ticking clock. And yesterday, as he left Glasgow, he continued to use that metaphor, continued to sound pessimistic. Is this exactly what we should be hearing from the Prime Minister, or is this a little bit too dour and potentially frightening our children?
I think, do you know what? He's a crowd pleaser, isn't he? He's a showman, but I'm not going to run away from you when you're trying to speak to me this morning, Tom. I'm here, ready to roll. No, I think he's a crowd pleaser, he's a showman, and his job this week is to motivate the rest of the planet to do what we're doing and to get green. We're talking about what we're doing on net zero. Actually, we're only responsible for 1% of the world's emissions. So Boris needs to go in there and sell the mission to the rest of them. I don't think that's a negative thing. I don't think that's you've got to throw the language around and motivate people, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Is that motivating language really what he's done in the past? In the past, he's been so much more positive, so much more, this is what we can do, this is what we are doing. All of the successes of the world, the fact that the Northern Hemisphere has grown back forests in the last 20 years. Not many people know that. The fact that polar bear populations are growing as well. All the positive signs in this world. Why isn't he pointing to the positive stuff? And he just seems to be dour and negative and sad.
The eternal optimist. It's about delivery, isn't it? And he's delivering it on this green agenda. He's doing a cracking job. The UK, as you've said it, the world is envious of what we're doing on reducing emissions and what we're doing on this green agenda. And actually, our own people back home don't quite get what we've done. But this week isn't about talking to Britain, is it? It's about talking to the world and giving them a kick up the backside. And I think that's exactly what he's done.
Well, just staying with COP for one more question. This idea that firms might be levied with fines from the Treasury if they don't bring forward plans to reach net zero within their own organisations. Is that something you support?
I think, do you know what? I am a pragmatic planet protector. I'm not entirely, I don't think we should do everything at any cost. I think every decision needs to be made on a one-by-one basis. But actually, getting green, reducing emissions, is about everybody doing their little bit. And if we can put some incentives behind protecting the planet and getting people on board, then I think that's probably what we should be doing. But I'll be looking at the detail, and it's about the scale of those penalties, it's all about the detail, isn't it?
I wonder how many people who voted Conservative in 2019 voted on the basis that firms would be taxed if they didn't go green enough, that extra regulations would be placed on our domestic marketplace. It might sound like it's drifting from that ordinary Tory philosophy. But something else is going on in Parliament today. It's not all about COP26. It's not all about the environment. There's an interesting set of amendments being brought forward after Prime Minister's questions, one by Andrea Leadsom and one by Julian Lewis. And these are both about the Standards Committee case against Owen Paterson. It sounds like the Tories are now trying to change the way that standards are assessed in the House of Commons because one ruling went against quite a popular member.
I think actually, do you know what? I'm not going to comment on the specifics of the case. I don't think that we should be marking our own homework as MPs. However, the coverage we've seen, the issues that we've seen around this case have shown that there are some pretty questionable processes involved in standards. So I think it's right that we're looking at it again. You know what? Such is the moving feast. I haven't actually seen the Julian Lewis amendment. I've seen the Andrea Leadsom amendment. I'm very interested to see what the outcome of that will be.
And just finally on this, it seems that certainly standards have been potentially it hasn't been the best system in the world. And one example of that is, of course, the MP for Delyn, Rob Roberts, someone who's been accused of harassing his staff. He has lost the party whip, but recently regaining party membership. What on earth is going on? Why is the Conservative Party letting someone back in as a member who's been accused of such things?
It's quite a bizarre thing that somebody is a member of the Conservative Party but not a member of the Parliamentary Party. I agree entirely. It seems absolutely bonkers that, you either decide that someone's responsible for something, in which case there should be penalties, but that should include their membership of the Parliamentary Party, one way or the other, and their membership of the party at large. I agree. It's bonkers.
Well, on that forthright note, thank you so much, Matt Vickers, for joining us here on The Briefing. We always appreciate your point of view and can get across that in a very straightforward way. Well, also here at COP26, it's not all about the jazzy backgrounds, the spinning globes and the world leaders. There's lots else going on as well. And yesterday, I took a little walk around the entire convention centre here in the Blue Zone, the UN-controlled Blue Zone, to see exactly what was going on. I started off by looking at some of the furniture.
Even the seats here at COP26 are environmentally friendly, made of cut-down trees. I'm not sure exactly how that's meant to be better for the environment or even longer lasting for the environment than ordinary sofa or furnitures, but that's what it is. It's the sign that celebrities and world leaders are all having their photos taken by. But is it real? Is it plastic? It's actually real. There's soil in the little indents here that's keeping an alive plant growing out of the COP26 sign. I've got to say there's a certain irony in hosting a global warming conference in one of the coldest parts of the UK. People are walking around either shivering or wearing coats. This is one of the exhibition halls here at COP26, and it is busy. One of the overriding themes of this conference is just how many people there are here. 30,000 in total have descended upon Glasgow, and many, many people are exhibiting their exhibits to them. We've got the Egypt pavilion on the left there, boasting about wind turbines. I thought that Egypt was more famous for its dams, but there, a big wind turbine on the Egypt pavilion. Who knew? Now, this is the German federal government stand here, and of course Germany has had a bit of a troubled time in terms of reducing its CO2 emissions in the last 10 years. Why? They closed all of their nuclear power stations after Fukushima, an idiotic decision. Not going to lie, not a lot going on at the Sierra Leone stand. Pretty empty. Despite Turkish President Erdogan not coming along to COP26, Turkey is still represented. Here's their big stand. Ironically, the US centre isn't at the centre at all. It's at the back, near the bins. Lots of people walking around here looking purposeful, doing next to nothing at all. We're entering the negotiation zone here. It's a lot less fun than the exhibition zone, but my gosh, you can see all of these temporary constructions, each one belonging to a different country. And this is what COP really is all about. It's not the exhibition spaces, it's the negotiations, the negotiators representing their countries and putting their countries' interests on the negotiating table. Lots of different countries with lots of different offices. Poland here, China, Senegal over there, Spain. I've got to say that a few organisations have been a lot less fun with their decorations than others. We see the very plain British Council here next door to Liechtenstein, which of course has adorned its door with wonderful scenery from its country. And what's this over here? There's an even more spectacular display. This is Indonesia, who have attached some plants to their door as well. Really quite fantastic stuff. A lot less boring than some other countries. Now, some COPs are meant to be bigger and some are a little bit smaller. We've all heard of Kyoto, we've all heard of Paris, but how many people have heard of Madrid in 2019? Not much came out of that COP. It was a bit of a COP flop. The question about this COP is, will it be as big as it's branded? Will it live up to these expectations? Will there be a new international agreement? Something else that goes on is people with microphones stand around talking to cameras. We've got an example of this right here. Make our planet great again. The French pavilion seems to have a bit of a Trumpish tone to its affairs here. Well, while I take a little break by this Formula E racing car, I've got to say that a member of the French delegation, the official French delegation, came up to us as we were filming that bit outside their pavilion to say that actually "Make the world great again" is a slogan that COP has used before Trump used it. She almost went as far as to suggest that Donald Trump might have nicked it from them. Well, it's an audacious claim. President Joe Biden walking out of that meeting room there following a finance summit with other world leaders, walking up the stairs, out and away. We're standing in the centre of one of the busiest, most important spots at COP26. Just less than an hour ago, the President of the United States walked up those stairs to exit a meeting that was held in an adjacent room. We've got world leaders walking through by the minute this corridor down to the more exclusive zone through those doors at the end, but also media, activists, world leaders and indeed business people, all here descending onto Glasgow to try and agree that something must be done about climate change. Here at one of the restaurants in the convention centre, you can see that they're listing the food items by the amount of carbon they emit. The lowest coming from the canned Scottish beetroot and broccoli, and the highest coming from the Scottish beef burger. I have to say, I had the Scottish beef burger. Earthling ID cards from the Eden Project sounds incredibly sinister. Justin Trudeau, why are CO2 emissions rising compared to 1990? Now this is the bit that I'm not allowed to go inside, because this is where all the important people are. And as you can see, people on the door stopping the less important from going in. Well, here we are right at the end of the complex of COP26, and what an enormous complex it is, ranging right the way from here miles and miles and miles in metaphorical senses down to where we were filming at the start. And what is it full of? What's the takeaway? It's full of lots of world leaders wanting to look incredibly important, walking around importantly and probably deciding not all that much at all. Well, there's a little sense of what it's like here in the main convention centre at COP26. We'll be trying to bring you more behind the scenes of what's going on here as the conference goes on. Of course, we're going to be here for the duration. Coming up next, though, it's To The Point with Patrick Christys and Mercy Maroki. This is all you're getting from me this morning. We'll be back again at 9 a.m. tomorrow, so be sure to tune in for that. But before all of that, here's the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A beautiful start out there, but it is a chilly one. Touch of frost in places, decent sunny spells for many, but further showers around coasts, and they'll continue through the rest of the day. A classic northerly airflow at the moment, bringing that cold air in from the north, but at the moment with light winds and plenty of clear skies, well, actually, if you can stand the cold first thing, it's beautiful skies out there, blue skies for many, sunny spells continuing. Areas of cloud, though, for northern and eastern Scotland, much of eastern England, and some showers here. More showers, I think, today compared to yesterday for the east. There'll also be further showers into the west, West Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, Northern Ireland, western Scotland. But in between, that's where the best of the sunshine will be. Some places not seeing a shower at all, for example, East Wales into the parts of the Midlands, central southern England. Highs here of 12, perhaps 13 Celsius and feeling quite pleasant. But a brisk breeze around coastal areas will make it feel chilly.